The Florida State offense takes off during fall camp.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show, we get to talk about the Noles having an offensive output that we've been waiting for. Micah Pettis, Coach Norvell, and other people that have been around the practices are quite happy. We're going to lead off with that. We're also going to talk about the key players that are making some of that happen and the key guys that have been banged up, little injury stuff, to talk about how do you handle that during fall camp, because they need to get the reps, but you can't have them out for Bama. That's a very key part of this show. We're going to have some questions on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, and we're also going to finish up with the coaches poll and discussing a very key player in Florida State's countdown. I'm down to number 19 on my list for the most important Noles of this season. But let's start off with that group of players on the offensive side. By all accounts, Florida State's offense had a really good day. Everything was clicking. Everything was going well. Micah Pettis, the right tackle that transferred into Florida State from Ole Miss, discussed it, and he made it very clear. He said, just everything we did was clicking. And you could just tell by his emotional side, the way his facial expressions were, that it really wasn't hyperbole. And I was like, oh, I did not see that coming. For those of you that really watch football, you probably know that it takes longer for offenses to get rolling. And that's fine, because offense is about chemistry, cohesion, and everybody playing on the same plane, if you will. On defense, you can have 10 guys that screw up and you can still get a sack because one guy dominated the player in front of him and it just worked out. While not likely, you can have a lot more errors on defense and be okay. To see an offense do well early in fall camp, it's surprising, but especially when you consider the following. Florida State's bringing a new coordinator, a new quarterback, and overall, the offense is going to start 9 or 10 transfers. So for them to start hitting this early is almost unfathomable for me. But I am all here for it. There is nothing worse than covering what I covered last year in terms of trying to figure out if Florida State was even going to make 10 points a game. That was hard. It's amazing, though, in college football, this does happen. You see teams really bottom out, and then the next year they take off. Chemistry, emotion, and riding the wave of what's happening around you in college football has been around for over 100 years. Teams go up and down a lot more at the college level than they do at the pro level. It's not even close. But to that, I'm going to ask a few questions for all of you out there, and I'm going to add and interject a few comments of my own about what I've heard and some of the things that I think are interesting. But before I want to interject a couple right off the bat. Javen Boggs is one of the players, and Elijah Moore is going to ironically be one of the first questions. Those are two young receivers starting to ascend. Just going to add this in. If those two guys hit, Boggs is a true freshman. Elijah Moore, I believe he's a redshirt freshman. I mean, they're young players. If they hit, meaning like they get 30, 40 catches apiece, in addition to Deuce, in addition to Randy Pittman and Landon Thomas, etc., playing well, Squirrel White, can Florida State be an 8-win or more team? I say yes. I think they could win 9. But for two young players to hit, that's a big question mark. What do you say? Comment down below. All right, so let's talk about the receiver room. Squirrel White and Deuce Robinson are the locks. They're going to play a lot of reps, probably start every game barring injury. Which players do you think will join the rotation and make something happen? I talked about the other day, Wayne McCoy. I didn't know if he would start, but because of his speed, athleticism, and just crazy hands, he was going to have a big impact on this team. I'm steadfast with that. Which other player or players do you think ascend? How do they use Jalen Lucas? All of that in a big ball. I think Florida State pass receivers by the end of the season will be the most improved unit on the team if it's not the O-line. It'll be close, but it'll be one of those two spots. before anybody asked, I don't even count quarterback. After the injury happened, and it wasn't a good fit anyway with DJ, there was no reason to even count what was going on because they didn't have a quarterback ready to play. Florida State didn't have anything close to ready to play. So I'm taking that out of the equation. But if I'm right and Florida State's receivers do take that jump, they can compete with any team on the schedule, and I would be surprised if they didn't pull a few upsets. The only game that I really don't like their chances in, pretty much regardless, is at Clemson. That's kind of self-explanatory. I think they're a top 5 team. It's on the road. That'll be very hard. But outside of that, I really don't think there's much of any game on this schedule that Florida State can't win. So we'll get into that as we get closer to season's beginning. Number 2, I mentioned injury in the lead-in. Landon Thomas has been banged up, and that creates a few different problems. I've had the opportunity to cover Gus, great guy, but his offenses are downhill, downhill, downhill. I mean, there's no way around it. He is very linear in his thinking. He wants to go from A to B. He wants to overwhelm you, suck the life out of you, and get you mentally weak to think that you just have to commit to stopping the run and overcommitting in numbers to the box, then throw it over your head. That's it. There is no specialty to his overall thinking. Now, how he gets there with all his formations and shifts and all that, that's a different conundrum for a defensive coordinator, but he really wants to do that. The only way it's going to work, because Landon Thomas is undoubtedly the best tight end on the roster, he's got to get a bazillion reps in fall camp, but he's a little banged up. How do you do that? They've got their first scrimmage coming up, I believe, tomorrow. How do you do that and keep him healthy? This is the question that I have spoken with privately and publicly with coaches all around the country, and I've never gotten a clear answer because I don't think there is a single answer. Every player, it's different, and that is awkward too. That's its own set of concerns, because if you give one player the day off, but he still gets to stay in the starting lineup and not somebody else, you can cause divide in the locker room. But there's no nice way to say this either. There are certain players that just have to play or not winning. You're thin at that spot, or he's your best player, or both. How does Florida State handle guys like Landon Thomas who need the reps as blockers or as a receiver? I don't think anything more than just timing with Tommy Castellanos. But how do you do that? This is one of those little idiosyncrasies that I think is really important for Florida State. This is the first injury that I've heard about that, while not necessarily serious, do you make him go through the rest of fall camp pretty much unscathed for him to start? Like, how do you do that? I think it's a fascinating topic, and a lot of coaches have different opinions on it. Running back battle. Usman Kroma has been talked about as a possible starter. There's also been discussion with several other players getting a lot of reps. I don't know which guy's going to start. I know Rodell is who I thought was going to be the starter. They bring in a transfer from Oklahoma. You've got Cam Davis back. You got Sam Singleton. You got Keziah Holmes. Like, they got a deep room. So my question is the following. Do you rotate based on situation more, or do you just rotate in general? I'll be curious to see what Florida State goes with, because they've got one of the deeper running back rooms in the ACC and the Power Four. A lot of different kind of players that can really cause problems, including Jalen Lucas. If you watch this show at all, you know how much I'm a big fan of Jalen Lucas. I think he's going to be a nightmare for many teams, but we'll see. When we come back, I want to talk about Thomas Castellanos and also the deep ball. If Florida State can throw it well down the field, they're going to be a nightmare. Ever wish managing your money felt a little bit easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. If you want to have fun with your life and save for something big, you got to start now. One of the things that I want to do is buy a really nice old truck, modify it, and have some fun with it later on in life. But it takes time to get there. Using Monarch Money to manage your money is an easy way to do that because it's more efficient. Everything in one app, in one place, so you know where you're spending. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Please become an everydayer and make sure that you come in for the rest of fall camp. We're going to have a lot of storylines. It's going to be a lot of fun. So like and subscribe to Locked On Seminoles. Let's talk a little bit about Thomas Castellanos. Is he going to be a consistent passer this year? Just a yes or no. Do you think he will be a consistent passer, especially from the pocket? I have my own opinions on this, and I'll share them over and over again, but I think he's a little underrated as a passer. Like, I don't think he's an NFL quarterback per se, but he's got a very strong arm, and he has the ability to really let it rip when he wants, and he can throw going to his left, which is a very difficult throw for a right-handed quarterback. But is he going to be consistent? We need to see that. That is my question. And secondarily, more importantly maybe, is he going to be a good deep ball thrower? Again, the arm strength will not be a question. I can tell you that just from watching him in high school. But my bigger question, does he make big plays in the passing game when it's really critical, especially games, again, these are the obvious, Clemson, Florida, Miami, NC State. Those are the kinds of games that really matter throughout your season. And this year, you got Alabama coming to town as an out-of-conference game too. He must be able to throw the deep ball. What do you think? Now let's just kind of overview what's going on with the depth chart and the thought process with Florida State football in general. It'll be a little bit of a shift to defense, but there's some offensive stuff here as well. I'm curious what everybody thinks about depth charts, especially with fall camp not reaching the first spring scrimmage. Again, I think Tuesday, I believe, is the first scrimmage, according to Norvell. Do you think there will be a lot of changes throughout fall camp? I think the O-line and quarterback are the two spots that are pretty well set. And again, barring Landon having a serious injury where he misses a whole bunch of practice, I think he's the starter at tight end. But for the most part, just about every other spot is open because the defense has a lot of guys that are having to adjust to a new scheme. You got a bunch of new receivers. Even guys like Deuce Robinson, while they're really good, they still had to come in and earn it in fall camp. So do you think there will be a lot of changes? I offer two answers on my end. Number one, yes, at the skill spots. I think they're going to rotate like crazy. But if somebody gets a hot hand or really develops a rapport like with Tommy at quarterback, then I think they will do a little bit more like what like Ohio State barely rotates at all at wide receiver. It amazes me they recruit the way they do there because they don't rotate. They do not. Florida State and just about everybody else do. So I'm curious to see what that rotation looks like, and especially when they try to go really fast. The guys that pick up the offense, the guys that understand the offense, if you've got to line up in different spots, you got to know the playbook cold. So part of it's going to be the players understanding because you got to trust them. But at the same time, part of it is also the basic part of this, and that's they just make plays. So you might mitigate the playbook instead of the other way around. Sometimes the coach has to adjust the players, and a lot of coaches are stubborn about that. But if you simplify and put the best guys on the field, I think it'll take care of itself. Gus has done that in the past. Now let's talk a little bit about a few key spots. The safety position, I've been hearing about the change causing a different rotation to different guys. Conrad Hussey might end up pushing for playing time and starting. KJ Kirkland could. Edwin Joseph. There's a lot of different guys, but allegedly Shaheem Brown hasn't been a starter. Now, he led the Noles in tackles last year, and he's been around the program a long time. He's a grad student. Is he really not starting? That shows you how hard this is sometimes. It's difficult sometimes for people to understand just what a big deal it is to go from a predominantly cover one man defense to a zone where you're thinking more and you're adjusting more based on the looks, down and distance. It's more pro scheme without the man coverage. This could be a totally different defense than what I expect, not only at safety, but at corner and also a linebacker. If you're going to play zone, you've got to understand concept for you, ball you man, and where everybody else is. we might see some lineups that are really surprising and rotations that are very surprising as well. But remember, matchups matter. If we're looking at a game where Florida State's going against a quarterback that's pretty good or he's just red hot, you might see linebackers change a lot. They've talked about that already. Pap has mentioned that, hey, we're 7-8 guys that can play. You may not go that far in rotation in a game. It's kind of hard to get lathered up and get a rhythm. But he's pretty confident in the athleticism FSU has a linebacker. That was a positive when he did his interview at the beginning of fall camp. But I don't think that that's going to be the end-all for how this is going to work. I think the defensive depth chart is going to be really fluid based on the teams they play. And again, because of that scheme, I need to see it with my own eyes. I'm a glass half empty guy. You got to prove it to me when you make this big a change defensively that they're going to be able to handle. I don't care what the talent level is. You've got to know exactly where you're going to be using the exact technique. So I think we're going to see a lot of rotation based on not only knowing the scheme, but who you're playing against, because your skill set against one team might not fit at all. But against somebody else, it may work. And as an example, Nicholson's a guy that I really like, but he's pretty good playing downhill. I don't know if he'll be good at the zone defense or not. I have no idea. But anytime they have a game where they want to blitz more, I bet you Nicholson plays. Can't teach his speed, can't teach his athleticism and length. That's a guy that I think has a really high upside. Now, let's talk a little bit about a guy that made the freaks list for one of these publications. And I find it interesting anytime somebody talks about stuff like this. People put out freaks list for high school, for college, etc. But Mekhi Danzey has the 9th best 400-meter time in the world right now, from what I read. He's the redshirt freshman that is from Florida High School in Tallahassee. He's very fast. He's moving from running back to wide receiver. If you're top 10 in the world in the 400, if that is correct, and you're like 19 years old, that is insane. I believe he is sub 45 now in the 400, and by a pretty decent margin. The Florida State strength staff allegedly thinks that he can top 24 miles an hour at some point. And they put those catapult vests on him. That's incredible. Florida State, as I've been saying for a while, has more talent than people know, and that could be yet another guy, even if he's just used situationally, that could really change the passing game, because you're not going to stay in front of him. You're top 10 in the world in the 400 meters. You could fly. So Florida State has plenty of guys there. Let's talk a little defense before we get into the coaches poll, which is bizarre and wild. Will Florida State rotate a lot or some versus Bama? This is just the Bama game. Just want your take. I know it's going to be hot, so you got to rotate probably a little more than you would like. But how much are they going to put Darrell Jackson in the lineup and not bring him out? How much is a guy like Deuce going to play? Whether it's Chroma, whichever running back, Salchuk, Rodell, whoever it is, how much are they going to rotate? First game, new schemes on both sides of the ball. I think that's a really interesting question. Number 2, blitzing Ty Simpson. Would you go after him, or would you sit back and play more zone? Tony White's defense is pretty darn good at tackling, and they play the run well historically. But Bama's massive up front. Got a really deep room of running backs. And here's the other key. They've got a quarterback, while not playing a lot, he's a redshirt junior. He's probably not going to get fooled by a ton. Are you going to come after him? I think that's a really important topic. Number 3, what does Alabama average on first down runs? Just traditional handing it to the running back. Can the Noles keep them under 4 yards per carry? I think that's one of the most important stats outside of turnovers, obviously, for this game. If FSU can keep them under 4 yards a tote, the Noles have a shot to win. Now, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Ryan Williams, get into a key Florida State player, and the coaches poll. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor for your favorite golf drink without the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, not every day is the same. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get going. You need a little extra, and that's where 5-Hour Energy comes into play. Whether it's golf, whether it's basketball, whether it's just your day at work. If you need a shot of something, 5 Hour Energy can be there for you. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The great ginger lime flavor helps you get the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the golf cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's 5hourenergy.com, you can use promo code LOCKEDONGolf for 20% off your first order. This offer is only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotion. The code is not good on subscriptions. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Let's talk a little bit about defending Ryan Williams, the Alabama speedster at wide receiver. Do you roll the coverage to him? Do you show constant different defenses? Remember, when you do that, that means you're putting more on the plate of your defenders to know the playbook, to know the scheme, to know how everybody works together. Cannot have a bust against Alabama. You can't have one. So do you change defenses a lot, or do you stick with what you're good at and just keep them in front of you? And finally, do you double him? Ryan Williams is not going to be covered by one player very often. As somebody who's been around him and watched him run, that is not a normal human being. Will they be able to cover him with one guy and just shade a safety once in a while? Probably. But do you double him much? I think that is a very big question for Florida State. Part of that, I guess, is dependent on whether or not Ty Simpson is getting much time to throw. You got to heat him up. He can't sit back there. I know he's not necessarily great, but he's a fourth-year college player. And DeBoer and Grubb, they know what they're doing at quarterback too. Number 5, which Florida State safety calls the adjustments? To the point I just made about Williams, if you see a formation that doesn't match what your play call is defensively, somebody in the back end's got to call it out and adjust the defense. Make sure the signal gets heard. It's going to be really loud in Doak Campbell, even when the defense doesn't want it to be to communicate. They're going to have to figure that out. Which safety or safeties, if they rotate, makes the calls, and who do you trust the most to get Florida State in the absolute best defense and do it fast? Alabama might run some tempo. Wouldn't shock me. Again, Ty Simpson's a redshirt junior, hadn't played a lot, but he's a smart kid. They've got a really talented group of coaches at Alabama. It wouldn't surprise me if they ran a series where they did at least some form of hurry up, maybe not full throttle like Rich Rodriguez does, but something to that effect. And if they do, you really need the safeties to be on the right page to get everybody else lined up in front of them in the proper place. That's going to be a big one. And finally, who's going to be the surprise player on defense? Whether you think it's somebody that's going to start, whether it's a key rotational piece, maybe it's somebody that's just in the nickel package for the defense. I have no idea. Third and long kind of situations. I have no idea who it's going to be. And I've been going through the list for the last couple of days. I honestly don't have an answer. If you've got one, please comment down below. Now I want to turn my attention to the poll that came out. Coaches' polls can be goofy. I don't necessarily put a lot of stock in them per se, but at the same time, the coaches' poll came out, and this is what we got. Texas 1, Ohio State 2, Penn State 3, Georgia 4, Notre Dame 5, Clemson 6, Oregon 7, Bama 8, LSU 9, Miami 10. That's your top 10. On this list, down at number 48, is Florida State. 48th? That seems a little drastic to me for Florida State, but whatever. I hope the Noles use that as motivation. But my question to you, do you think that even coaches kind of just look at the logos and insert the names into the list? Because I think it's funny that that list right there, I mean, it has a couple on the cusp of the top 10. I'll give it credit. Number 11 is Arizona State, but they were a surprise last year. Then you got number 12, you got Illinois. That's a team that I think is going to make some noise this year. But anybody else, like, there's not a lot of surprise. Like Michigan, they've got 14th. That's pretty high for a team that's probably going to start a true freshman quarterback. They got them ahead of Ole Miss. They got them ahead of SMU, who's in the playoff. There are a lot of questions. But anyway, I just wanted to share it and just talk about it for a second because I think polls are interesting because they can be used as motivation. If you're not ready for what's going on in college football, you know, that's one thing, and it's on you to go out and get beat. You got to be prepared. But the outside noise, the media and everything, that's a part of this too. You have to be ready for it. And I'm not sure that every team really is. A lot of guys, they get overwhelmed when they read social media and stuff. So coaches tell them to stop even paying attention to it at all. And that's fair. But I also believe that it's unavoidable in today's world. You're not going to ask a young man to put down his phone all the time and expect that to work. They're going to look at stuff. Now, to wrap up the show, I want to talk about a player that I think is very critical to their success this season, and one that started to come on at the end of last year, Earl Little Jr. He's going to play, I think, the rover position. It's one of the safeties. He's going to be that hybrid guy. He'll be down in the box area quite a bit, or overhang, playing in front of the slot receiver sometimes. They'll probably move him around, but playing closer to the line is the safest way to put it. I need to see Tony White's defense and how he uses it from play to play to really know and how much adjustments there are. But if he hadn't come on, they're still in a decent spot at safety. Again, KJ Kirkland, Conrad Hussey, Shaheem Brown, they're not thin at this spot. But Edwin Joseph, another one. But if he can really step up, and this is his fourth year out of college, it's going to help Florida State with another question I brought up earlier. That experience in the back end to get everybody lined up. He's a guy that went to Bama, transferred to Florida State. He has seen what it looks like in many different ways. Obviously, he knows a lot of the guys he'd be playing against. He understands how difficult it is to play in these kind of games in these environments. He knows what it looks like to prepare for them. I think it's important, not just for this game, but overall for Earl Little Jr. to step up and have a big time game. Florida State can't let the ball go over their head. Obviously, they got to get everybody lined up, but they got to tackle better too. And he's been noted as a physical player. Florida State needs more physicality. They need more guys that are ready to come up and hit and make a play and just change the momentum of games. Earl Little might be that guy. I don't know how the safety room is going to shake out. I'm already a little surprised because Shaheem Brown, I thought, would be the surefire starter. Allegedly, he's not. So what do I know? But if Earl Little, from what they have said, is really doing that well, and he's allegedly the guy kind of leading the pack, Florida State's going to be in a better spot. And he is my number 19 overall player on my countdown for most important players to play well this year for the Noles. And again, physicality, experience. He knows what it looks like. Obviously, his family's got history at the NFL, etc. This is a really important player for Florida State to be consistent from game one against Bama all the way through the Florida game at the end of this season. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and share this podcast. And above all else, comment. Let me know what you think about what's going to happen in the Bama game, any matchups you want to hear about. We will talk to you again soon here on Locked On Seminoles.